The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists. Blake Anderson, cryptographic economist.
Hello, thanks for having me decentralized.
Kyle Torpy from kyletorpy.com.
Hey everyone, great to be here.
Tone Vase from Liberty Life Trail.
Hi everyone.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network, reminding you to give us a thumbs up and a share to help more people find the show. Moving on to issue 1. Issue 1. So-called Satoshi speaks. Craig Wright shared more of his controversial opinions recently, speaking at the Future of Bitcoin conference in the Netherlands. Wright is on the side of the bigger blockers, saying loudly that Bitcoin should be used for buying coffee, that Node should cost $20,000, that Bitcoin scaling could be fixed in 3 hours, and that Blockstream developer Greg Maxwell is secretly working with the Australian tax office to track him down. Blake Anderson, your thoughts on Wright's ramblings?
Well, I think that Bitcoin should be highly centralized. No, I mean decentralized, because we need one world currency. No, I mean a decentralized currency. And if you don't have $20,000, then piss off. I think that what he said was very, very interesting for very many reasons. I think that most notably, he said that, do you want to be able to verify the chain, or do you want to have money that works? And it's like, well, ipso facto, in the hierarchy of understanding means that if I can't verify the chain, then what you're saying doesn't make any goddamn sense. So, I mean, I guess that's just the strongest point that I could end on, is just think a lot about the order of operations and the hierarchy of understanding, and then saying that, and then think about what that means. And I'll pass it on to the rest of the panel here.
Would the real Satoshi be so angry? Kyle Torpy.
Yeah, I don't really understand why people are even paying attention to Craig Wright. I mean, he's been proven to be a fraud a bunch of times. And then he shows up at this conference where I don't know if he was planned to go on, because John Matonis kind of like went up there and then said, I'm going to give my time to Craig Wright. So I don't know if the conference organizers can be held responsible for that. But yeah, this is a weird situation for Roger Ver too, because even like all of his followers and all the big blockers were like, we know he's not Satoshi. And then Roger sent out that tweet where he's like, I don't care whether he's Satoshi or not. I agree with all this stuff he's saying. But I mean, the only reason people are even paying attention to this stuff is because he fraudulently said he was Satoshi. And like everything that, I mean, even if you're going to say like you're going to pay attention to what he's saying no matter what, everything he said has been like the technical stuff about SegWit he put out. Everyone who has a technical understanding of Bitcoin was like, this is BS. And then that thing about SegWit from a legal perspective was really strange and crazy. And then like CoinDesk was pretty quick after they published that to like get all of the Bitcoin legal experts to explain how that was complete BS too. So yeah, it's just I don't know. I don't really know why we're even talking about this guy.
It doesn't seem like he should have been on the stage, given the fact that he roots from fraud. His fraud was disproven. Why is he still around? Excellent points, Kyle. Tone Vase.
Yeah, so Kyle, that was an interesting point, because he wasn't on the speaker on the original list. It was John Matonis. And because of what happened during that event, I have completely lost a lot of respect for John Matonis, because they're working together now over at nChain. Now, I always knew that Roger Ver was working with Craig Wright. I'm sorry, I can't call him by that name. I call him Fake Satoshi. That's the only way I refer to him by. I apologize to my normal followers, because they know I only refer to him as Fake Satoshi. So Fake Satoshi going on stage. I watched that presentation. It was actually the only presentation I've watched from that conference. I know I need to watch the rest of it, because I'm sure the rest of it is just as entertaining as that presentation was. I'm actually very happy that that presentation took place for several reasons. First of all, I've heard that the what do you call it? the Reddit cesspool, occasionally known as RBTC, had actually had huge infighting over that presentation. So that's one amazing thing that came out of it. The other amazing thing that came out of it is that anyone that was like leaning or like on the fence about big blockers or what they were planning to do should now have full realization of what needs to be done. Like, I think that presentation and people talking about that presentation has done more for the user-activated soft fork and SegWit than anything like that I could have said. So I'm actually very, very happy that he went on stage and said that. And I picked on a couple of things that he said. I mean, the $20,000 node part is insane, but it's also great. It's like the more you fight it, the more the opposite happens. Like the more you fight the drug war, the worse, the more people want to rebel and, go again and do drugs, right? It's like same thing with like parenting and kids. So in this particular case, the more big blockers start screaming that you shouldn't run a node, only like these, all you need is 12 nodes around the world, and that's all Bitcoin needs, the more people want to create their own nodes through Raspberry Pis to kind of stick it to them, saying, no, wait a minute, we can't afford 4 megabyte blocks because our nodes won't work. So the more they scream in the opposite direction, the more the community is fighting back. You can see the amount of BIP148 nodes that are popping up left and right. I'm assuming almost everybody saw my tweet from yesterday when I put all of my equipment together in one spot, and that's now my most popular tweet ever. And I'm going to spend this entire weekend setting up my miner, setting up my node, setting up everything, setting up my Trezor, moving my coins. This is my prep weekend this weekend, because next weekend I have a little trip, and the weekend after that I'm going to California. So this is like my only weekend to get everything done. So people are actually fighting them back. So the $20,000 node was ridiculous. The most awesome thing that he said was they were going to start a mining pool and they were going to start rejecting SegWit blocks, which is also amazing. I hope they do that. I mean, they're threatening to fork off the network. And this is kind of great. I also, on my podcast, people are still worried about them. And look, I've noticed that like you can only buy popularity so far. Eventually, you will run out of money, right? Because Bitcoin doesn't have a government that can enforce the rules. All they can do is spend more and more money on media and propaganda, and eventually you run out of money. And that's exactly what's going to happen to them, because they're trying to take over protocol development. And they're spending all this money trying to take over protocol development, so they don't have to spend money on the propaganda to take over protocol development. But when that fails, they will eventually run out of money. Like, they will literally have to threaten and actually fork off the network. I mean, you can't trust any of them. Somebody tweeted at me saying that fake Satoshi had swore that he was only going to be on camera one time, like a year ago, and now here he is on camera doing a presentation. Like, you can't even trust them on the smallest details. So all in all, I'm happy he did that presentation. It was so unreasonably dumb and insane that it's actually helping the SegWit adoption so much. I love it.
Our best friends are our enemies. And thanks to the 260 or so live viewers, if everyone could give us a thumbs up and a share, that helps more people find the show. Let's move on to the exit question. Force prediction. Craig Wright is Satoshi Nakamoto. Yes or no? Blake Anderson.
I said the first time that he spoke in public when we were at the D, we were there, all of us live at the World Crypto Network. After the first time I heard him speak ever, I said, this guy's not Satoshi. And if he is Satoshi, I'm out, because this guy is so not what I signed up for. And really, honestly, I was so confident that it wasn't really like a fair, like, if he is, I'm out, gotcha. And So I don't think that he's Satoshi. I made a pretty strong statement early on, and because I made such a strong statement early on, I might not be the best person to answer this question, but I've felt very strongly since early on that he is not Satoshi, and I think that his more recent statements actually back that up.
Kyle Torpy.
Yeah, I'm also going to say he's not Satoshi. It seems like he's using this fraud to get himself his own clout, because as we said, like, the only reason people are paying attention to what he says is because people think he might be Satoshi, which is also why he's targeting people like Roger Ver, who will do anything for political gain in Bitcoin, it seems. And I also saw, Tone mentioned the tweet he saw. I saw another one that was like a public, I think it was a post on a mailing list from Craig Wright a few months before the Bitcoin white paper was announced, where he was saying, like, anyone who tries to remain anonymous on the internet is a coward or something like that. And then the Satoshi white paper came out like a few months later. So it's just another tidbit of information, I guess.
Could be more ironic leading if he is Satoshi. Tone Vase.
No, he is definitely fake Satoshi. So I'm gonna keep calling him that. But to slightly elaborate on what Blake said about the D Hotel event, we were all there. Well, not Kyle, you weren't there, but like the other World Crypto Network members were there. And I was actually given a heads up that he's going to be the guy on the Skype call or the Hangouts or whatever they were using for him. I was actually given a heads up ahead of time that this guy has a high probability to be Satoshi. So because of that heads up, I was paying attention to it. And I did not have the technical competency like Blake does in order to make that distinction right then and there. So there is no way I could have known if he was or wasn't. However, I was leaning that he wasn't, and then Gavin Andreessen personally convinced me for like a minute that he was, because this happened at last year's consensus when he had just managed to fool Gavin Andreessen and convince Gavin that he's Satoshi. And then I happened to be sitting next to Gavin like later that day or the next day, and Gavin was very, very certain. So then I'm like, okay, maybe he is. And then a couple of days later, it was proven that Gavin is a bit incompetent in that assessment, and then it all went back to the way it should be.
It's been an interesting journey, and certainly I'm always excited when we have a Satoshi, because it would make Bitcoin more of a normal project. It would give us someone to ask questions to, and it would help fill in the history, maybe give the media some relaxation over the billions and billions of dollars that are out there. But I'm going to agree with the panel. I don't think that he's Satoshi. I want to second what Blake said. We watched that presentation live. He made incredible claims of the power of his supercomputer, so much so that a professor who was with us wanted him to simulate the Bitcoin network on that computer and tell us what happened so we could learn from the power of his supercomputers. But it doesn't seem like he ever had those computers. The records of him buying them are questionable. There's tax problems. It's very unclear. I think he might have been related to the Satoshi project, perhaps. Maybe he had pieces of things, but I don't believe that he's Satoshi. But time will tell. We'll have to keep looking and find out. Let us know what you think.
Wasn't there also a report today saying that there was some kind of a liquidation of his supercomputing company to pay off some kind of backed debt? I don't want to talk about people's debts or what they may or may not have, but in terms of if you get into a really, really rough financial situation and you know enough about this stuff to be able to fool a vast majority of the population, I can understand the draw to doing that.
Yeah, also one more comment. There is very little incentive for people. Look, Kyle, you're an investigative journalist. There's very little incentive for you to like do all this research to prove that he's fake Satoshi. Like it's thankless research, right? Because then the next month some other crazy is going to come out, and then you got to do that, right? Like proving the negative is just such a thankless, annoying process. And some people have taken the time to dig into his past and like find major holes in it. But all in all, like why on earth would I spend my valuable time like digging into his past and doing like research on that for free just to disprove him. Like it's really like there's not much money in doing that. Or, I mean, and the majority of the people are already kind of convinced that he's a fake Satoshi. So that's kind of one of the issues. But some people have gone out and they've disproved a lot of his like earlier statements about his past and like showed them as lies.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not really interested in talking about him or covering it all. But to add to what Blake said, I forget where I read it, but there was also that company Encrypt, which is now Enchain. When they got Craig Wright to join the company, they also acquired all of Craig Wright's companies, which cost the company $15 million to do. So that's definitely an incentive to act like you're Satoshi. I think that was.
I thought there was something about 100 million. I thought Enchain got sold for like 100 million or something.
Yeah, that's what they raised, but the part of it where they acquired the rights to Craig Wright, like.
Oh, so Enchain
just Craig Wright's portion of it.
Right, they raised 100 and they handed 15 mil to Craig Wright.
That's what the article seemed to indicate, but I'd have to go back and check.
Okay,
I think it was the guy
sense.
who was writing the book on. They were trying to get him to write a book about Craig Wright as like the life story of Satoshi, and then he just realized that it was a complete farce, and he just wrote an article about how it was all BS at the end.
Makes sense.
And now they are holding blockchain patents, and they may attempt to come down on Bitcoin in the future. Another very not Satoshi action. But I'm going to agree with the panel.
While they're doing that, and they're accusing Blockstream of holding the patents and going after people, which is obviously never going to happen.
And Blockstream has said publicly their patents are for defensive use, which is good right up until we get to that point, but we'll have to see how that goes. Moving on to issue 2, Bitcoin replaced. Eric Voorhees, legendary Bitcoiner and the CEO of the Shapeshift Exchange, thinks that Bitcoin could be replaced if the scaling issue is not settled. The debate, which has been going on for the past 2 years, has, according to Voorhees, been settled by SegWit2x. The CEO lends his support not only to SegWit, but also to hard forking Bitcoin. He claims that Bitcoiners are generally not interested in the scaling debate and that a solution should be adopted post-haste. Tone Vase, your thoughts on Mr. Voorhees and his ideas?
Wait, where was this article? I literally read through the articles like 30 minutes ago. Did you like flip the agenda on us?
No, it's been in the discussion the whole time. I'm doing this live.
Okay. So I recently got into a little debate with Derek Voorhees on Twitter. And I left the debate saying, you don't get it. And I left it at that, right? I mean, at one point, 3 days ago, he texted at me asking, what is an economic node? And meanwhile, he is one of the biggest economic nodes at his company in the space. So I don't know what's going on here. Like, I really don't. Like, I find it, I don't know if I find it insanely disappointing that the people that I somewhat looked up to when I joined this ecosystem back in 2013, almost every one of those people that, they didn't really get me into the space. I mean, I got the Bitcoin on my own, right? But when I was learning about the space, when I was learning what Bitcoin was, when I was learning what Bitcoin stood for, all of the people I respected are the complete opposite of that today. Like, I wish these people were no longer in the space. Like, I don't understand how this happens. I don't understand how, like, it's like mind-boggling to me. Like, I really don't get it. It's like I feel like I'm in a bizarre world, right? Like, everything has reversed. Like, I think Eric Voorhees has completely lost touch with what Bitcoin stands for. Can
I jump in on that? I got to jump in on that. I don't think that he's lost touch completely with Bitcoin, with what Bitcoin stands for. I think that he has a family and he has overhead, and that if Bitcoin development goes in a specific way, Shapeshift may not have a value proposition anymore. So I think he's pigeonholed into supporting something for his own benefit that's maybe not for the benefit of other people. And I can't really attack him too much for that because he has a family. I mean, he has, people to feed and stuff like that. It's just that I vehemently disagree with his position.
Okay, fine. No, fine. Let me play devil's advocate to that, right? Prior to this recent mess, I always considered Eric Voorhees to be an honest, fairly trustworthy guy. He hasn't scammed anyone in the Bitcoin space yet, right? I would respect Eric Voorhees 100 times better if he would come out and publicly say that. Say what you just said, Blake. Everybody would respect him better. The core developers would respect him better. They will give him a call and say, hey, listen, let's talk about this, right? But when you start pulling the Jihan Wu card, supporting bullshit for personal benefit without being honest about it, that's a problem. And I will be calling you out on not supporting what Bitcoin stands for. I can respect someone that straight up says, I have a business that isn't benefited by what you're doing. What can we do about this? And if there's nothing that can be done about it, then sure, I will support. Now, I won't support, but I will at least understand where Eric Voorhees stands. But if he's not going to be honest about, you're speculating that that's what he's doing. You're speculating that he realizes that for his business, he's doing what he's doing to support his business, but he's not saying that he's doing that. That part I have a major problem with, right? And
I know it's hard to work out motivations, and it's really maybe not that productive to talk about motivations, but whenever somebody's doing something you really can't figure out or that's making you really mad, I find it best to go take a sheet of paper and be like, are they insane? Are they evil? Or are they really, really, really stupid? And you try to cross those three out and be like, okay, it would be really, really, really easy to assume these three things. Let's try to think about a pragmatic reason that they might be doing this. Right. So that's where that came from. I don't know for sure that that's his reason. No. That's just what I'm trying to assume. So don't.
No, that's fine, and that is a reason. Let me throw one more in there. Right? A lot of these early Bitcoiners, they got rich on Bitcoin. They've done really, really well. And a lot of them own companies. And look, I don't own any companies. All I do is make YouTube videos. And I am busy as hell, okay? So I can only imagine how people like Roger Ver, Charlie Shrem, Eric Voorhees, I can only imagine how busy these guys are, like Vitalik Buterin, for God's sakes, right? So these guys are incredibly busy. And they run companies. And they have to, they have employees. They have customer service support. So, and what happens is they don't have time to pay attention to shows like this, where perhaps back before they would be on shows like this all the time. So, and not to mention that now if you're rich and you're making a lot of money, you want to enjoy that money, right? You want to splurge on that money. So it's by no fault of your own, you start to, party a little too much, enjoy all the money that you've made, and there's nothing wrong with that. And you're busy running your companies. And then what ends up happening is you're not paying attention to the actual debate on the ground and why we can't go to a 2 megabyte block, because it will create a hard fork. Why hard forks are dangerous. Why the core developers were compliant with a hard fork a year ago, and why they're no longer supporting a hard fork. As far as you're concerned, if you haven't been paying attention the last 12 months, the core developers have some kind of an agenda, and that's why they changed their mind. You haven't kept up with the fact that they spent 9 months doing science on a hard fork and came to a scientific conclusion that it's not feasible. But if you were too busy running your business, if you were too busy, enjoying your millions of dollars, people are, similar people to you are telling you complete bullshit and you believe them. And that's how you end up signing a document to run code. You don't even know who is programming that code. This is one of the arguments I got into with Eric, in that Eric is saying, well, I will run the code because I signed it. I'm like, what do you mean? You signed a document to run code that wasn't even created yet. This is even worse than the politicians that sign bills into Congress that they haven't even read. This is like them signing bills into Congress before they even knew who was going to write the bill. So anyway, so I got into this whole debate with him. So that's kind of my view on the situation. If Eric would come out and be honest that it gets in the way of his business, I would show him a little more respect. And I've been pretty respectful to these guys, in my opinion.
And he is a very OG Bitcoiner, starting Satoshi Dice, many other early Bitcoin companies. So let's go to Blake Anderson.
What was the question again?
Eric, what is his view?
Yeah, what do you think about Eric Voorhees' view that Bitcoin could be replaced if the scaling situation does not resolve itself?
Oh, well, I mean, I didn't even answer the question. That is totally wrong, but I'm not gonna. But I'll yield my time.
You yield your time. What were you gonna say? Because I'm gonna use everything that you said against you. So go ahead and hamstring yourself here real quick.
No, I'm just saying Bitcoin can't be replaced. If Bitcoin fails, no crypto will ever be a store of value. I mean, the store of value proposition will be permanently gone. You can replace the value transfer function, but with crypto, Monero, Litecoin, whatever. But there will never be a store of value, because if Bitcoin can be replaced by an altcoin, so will the next best altcoin be replaced by another altcoin. Like, there's only one chance to get the store of value function correct, and that's Bitcoin. That's the one and only chance.
Okay. Yeah. Well, things being replaced. Let's talk about the idea of something being replaced. Well, if you have root access to your computer, you can replace whatever the hell you want. You're going through and you're writing and replacing all kinds of stuff. If you don't have root access to a computer and you're not replacing code, replacing something that you don't own is really, really, really tough. We actually have mechanisms that do that. They're called markets. Markets replace things based on, is this not going well and is something else, going better. So if there's markets for replacements, those things will happen. If there's a market for small transactions and, centralization, that's probably going to happen. Is there a market for Bitcoin and for decentralization and for holders? Yeah. So, hopefully that will, continue to happen. Is there some agreement in the middle where we can make Bitcoin more like a scope bloat nightmare of Ethereum and all kinds of nonsense and stuff? Not really. There is argument to moderation fallacy, where it's like we're going to compromise between the absolute truth to some third option and just totally go down the wrong road because we're not going to accept this is a binary decision. So we have a decision about the qualities of Bitcoin. Do we want it to be faster and more centralized like a zero raid, or do we want it to be more scattered out and more operable in terms of robustness and failure protection, like a 5 raid? If you don't know what a 0 raid or a 5 raid are, it might be something like to go and like look up what those are in terms of like basic technology, because it's a really, 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 really good description for how centralization can make things really, really fast and unstable, and how decentralization can maybe slow things down a little bit. But it's maybe cool to chill out for a little while and make sure that the things that you build that have tons of value don't binarily, collapse and go to 0 or get traded through the floor all of a sudden. So all of this coming into mind, I think that what's happening is that Eric sees that this middleman position that he has is really useful for Bitcoin, and if that goes away, that value proposition that he brings might go away, and that's bad for his family. It's not just bad for his family; it's bad for any employees he has. It's bad for a lot of people that depend on him. So just to call him, evil or bad or stupid because he's looking out for all these people that depend on him, I don't think that that's fair at all. But at the same time, as Tone said, it might behoove him to be honest about the reasons that he's picking this stuff. But then again, does that compromise his position in terms of it being very, very strong? So he's in a tough spot, basically, Eric is. And I can see that people are like, yeah, if Bitcoin was a 0 rate, it would go really, really fast and it would be great. But there's a lot of reasons for which we can't do that without going into the technicals and trying to stay at the top level of this is what centralization brings and this is what decentralization brings in a pure computer science example. Hopefully that can help people to understand why SegWit and getting it involved in Bitcoin and then waiting for a while before we see if we want to do a hard fork and have everybody on board and then get it done, or if it's too contentious still and we need to wait for longer.
Right. Oh, just one more add on that. And you're right, Blake. And this is what I mean. What do you call it? Shapeshift. The Shapeshift business is completely, it does not need the Bitcoin's store of value function or store of value ability. Shapeshift doesn't hold Bitcoin waiting for it to appreciate. In fact, Shapeshift's plan is to have the maximum number of useful altcoins as possible. So in a way, his business relies on complete disarray and dysfunction. So yeah, in order for his business to do better, you don't want one crypto to rule them all. It literally eliminates his business. And it's not about whether it's SegWit or some other form. For his business to thrive, you literally need the least amount of stability across the board in the entire ecosystem.
And maybe, but also it's, as technology goes forward, things get replaced, jobs get replaced, automation. Now that we're in the ultra high speed technology, his, the value proposition was massive and then eclipsed very, very quickly. That might just be something we have to get used to more and more. I mean, like, who knows? It's something to consider, I guess.
And
well, conflicts of interest kind of,
go ahead.
Sorry. Conflicts of interest kind of exist all over the ecosystem, but it's weird that people only seem to bring it up the most when it's like Blockstream talking about how all the developers are working on Bitcoin Core and stuff like that, even though I think Chaincode Labs and MIT have just as much, or if not more, developers working on Bitcoin. But these kind of conflicts of interest exist all over the ecosystem. And like you guys said with Shapeshift, or someone like blockchain.info that wants a lot of small payments on chain because that's what their business model is built on. And they've told all their investors and that they're going to be able to scale Bitcoin to 100 or 1,000x. Peter Todd had a really good tweet storm about this yesterday. If anyone saw it, he was talking about blockchain.info and Coinbase telling their investors they were going to scale on chain, and now they just want to fire the core developers because they're not giving them what they want and all that kind of stuff.
It's certainly a good reason to do what they're doing, and I just wanted to remind everyone that RAID 0, for our purposes, is where your data is spread out on many drives, but if one of the drive fails, you can't restore your data, where RAID 5, it's more like striping, and you'd use maybe 4 out of the 5 drives, and then the 5th drive would be a backup, and this way you have stripes on different drives in case they fail. You can just sub in a new drive. So better to hold the blockchain on one of those than one on the others. Let's go to the exit question. Choose an altcoin to replace Bitcoin, and why? Tone Vase.
Well, like I said, the store of value function will never be replaced, but as a day-to-day, value transfer, I think Litecoin is best suited for the job right now.
Kyle Torpy.
Yeah, I agree with Tone. I don't think Bitcoin's going to be replaced, but well, to talk more about the article specifically, I wish I would have kind of pushed back against some of Eric's points, because I don't think Bitcoin will be replaced because once it gets SegWit, that'll be enough for the short term, and I don't think this hard fork portion of SegWit 2x is going to happen, just because Bitcoin is kind of resistant to contentious hard forks by default, and that hard fork seems like it'll be kind of contentious. And then if they do go forward with the hard fork, then we're going to have like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Enterprise, and Bitcoin Enterprise would seem to be the one that would be the altcoin, especially if Paul Stork and those guys get the drive chain stuff down. Then we could have like a big block drive chain, which is lower security, but that's what a much larger block size on the main chain would do anyways. So then we could have kind of like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Enterprise on the same network, which would seem to be much more valuable than 2 split networks for the store value and payment use case. In terms of altcoins that could replace Bitcoin, I don't really see. I mean, the Ethereum market cap is high now, but that's pretty much all these decentralized autonomous Ponzi schemes that are being launched on top of it. So I imagine that will eventually go away once all these ICOs start dumping their Ether on the market, which may have already started a little bit. Maybe, I mean, Monero is kind of interesting because it's technically very sound from a privacy perspective, but something like that might eventually be a side chain to Bitcoin, or maybe Bitcoin will get confidential transactions and you can combine that with CoinJoin to get very good privacy. And yeah, I like Litecoin is kind of like a testnet for Bitcoin, like a testnet with more value at stake.
Well, we need to involve more automotive words here. If Bitcoin could get a carburetor to go with the drive shaft and the drive chain and everything. Let's go to Blake Anderson. Choose an altcoin.
God, I don't want to, pile on to anything else that anybody else has said, because I really, really, really don't want us to, from this panel, send a unified message that X will replace Bitcoin, because I don't think it's a tenable thing to say. But that being said, there's a lot of stuff that I haven't been able to tell people about Charles Lee before, because I didn't want to mess up his job at Coinbase. For example, there's been multiple times where I've had issues with Coinbase and BitPay communicating when I've been trying to buy food or something like that for my son. Probably could have planned better, but like he's having a meltdown and like I'm having a really, really tough time with my special needs son and there's something going wrong. And Charles Lee personally himself, like being the head of like support at Coinbase, like personally took it upon himself to help me with my issues and make sure that like Oliver could eat like then and stuff. So I've met Charles Lee several times in real life. I followed his work. He's not prone to hyperbole. He's got a sense of humor and he's humble. I think that Litecoin is way, way, way ahead of other coins in terms of the commitment, talent, and humility of their devs. And I don't think that a lot of other coins can compete. It doesn't mean that I don't like Monero or that I don't think that any other teams have like any competent devs or whatever. I just think that Litecoin is in a class of its own. But at the same time, they do have a memory intensive mining issue in terms of that can lead to centralization. And then they also have a lot of development complexity right now because they have SegWit and Bitcoin does not. So those are issues for Litecoin as well. But I think that the quality of people that are involved in any given project is a really, really big sign of how well it's going to do or not. And I think that Charles Lee is one of the nicest people I've ever met. So take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, can I just jump back in here real quick? So I'm sure that if you poll the world, you're going to get, Litecoin as a huge favorite and Monero as probably a distant second. And everything else is going to be a scramble. I mean, some crazy people will say Ethereum, but that's not realistic, of course. But here's the thing, though. You have to realize, first of all, Litecoin has a bigger mining centralization problem now. I think like one pool is like at 55% of all Litecoin. So they're already beyond the 51% threshold on a single pool. In addition, if you think Bitcoin mining is equipment decentralized, I think that Bitmain has a bigger percentage in selling equipment for Litecoin as they do on a percentage basis than they do for Bitcoin. But if someone can fact check me on this, that would be great. So Bitmain is a major seller of Litecoin equipment. In fact, it's to Bitmain's advantage for Litecoin to take over Bitcoin because they get to sell more shovels. And look, Litecoin already has SegWit. So what the hell are we arguing about, right? Bitcoin is going to collapse over SegWit only to be taken over by the next best thing that literally got SegWit in months ago. This is not happening, guys. We're going to get SegWit. There's not going to be a hard fork. It's all going to go relatively smoothly, and it's up to the miners to really decide how smoothly we're going to go. But it's going to happen. SegWit, no hard fork. That's the reality. But Bitcoin isn't going anywhere. There's too much blood, sweat, and tears went into it. It's not going. It's not leaving us.
If there is a coin that will replace Bitcoin, it hasn't been written yet. It's likely something like Mimblewimble or Bitcoin 3, this is it, something like that. It will come out later. And thanks so much to everyone for watching. We've got 515 live viewers. If everyone could give us a thumbs up and a share, Tone thinks we can get over 700. I'm not sure. I don't know if the chat will handle it, but give it a try if you want to give us a thumbs up.
That's my record.
If you think we can break 700, there's 520 of you now. No pressure. Thumbs up and share.
The record, 710 on my channel. Let's see if we can break it on W.
That's all he wants is the record. Let's move on to issue 3. Alphabay temporarily out of service. The Darknet marketplace Alphabay was offline for more than 2 days, making many believe that they had been exit scammed or perhaps acquired by law enforcement. The administrators posted that they had been doing maintenance, but we have heard that one before. Blake Anderson, what's the future of Darknet markets? Will we continue to see a single centralized site like Alphabay, or will we see decentralized options like Open Bazaar, what was once called dark market?
Well, let's just go into conjecture mode here. I think that it's tough when you are the law. Like, imagine that you're the law. Imagine that you're the cops and you want to, freeze out all of these political violations that are going on, because you can't have that. Now, you're the law and you want to shut down all of these, ultra free markets. But when you do, more of them pop up, and generally the ones that pop up are, doing things differently, especially in terms of why the last one failed. So it's not a very easy thing to cut the head off of the Hydra. I hate to speculate about this because it's really not cool in terms of this is a very, very real and emotional situation. But some people were saying, oh, it went down for long maintenance. Maybe they are, maybe they're down. Maybe they're not coming back. Maybe Ross Ulbricht helped people in the government go and shut them down with the information that he knew. And maybe he's going to get a Frank Abagnale-like deal, like catch me if you can, and then he'll be able to not be in jail so much and stuff like that. Now, I think that is really, really, really deep into the what if bag. And actually, as people were talking about that, Free Ross tweeted about something. So I assume that was Lynn, probably his mom. So maybe don't go like that far into the what if bag, because that might be kind of hurtful to the people that are actually really hurting and stuff. Also, Alphabay came back up. It hasn't been shut down. So I don't know if going so far deep into the what if bag in terms of like making people say like, hey, that's it's a member of my family. I don't think they would do that. Plus, it's not really you don't have any information, like all this conjecture leading to somebody having to weigh in. I think in terms of what were the consequences of this discussion, I think that was kind of maybe not the best way to handle conjecture, but I think Kyle has a lot more information about this story that's not just fluff. So I'll turn it over to him.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason to connect this to Ross Ulbricht. It's just because they all ran dark markets doesn't mean they know each other. They hang out in some chat room. Kyle Torpy.
Yeah, so it still seems pretty unclear what's going on here. Alphabay has had a bunch of similar situations in the past where they kind of go dark for 9 or more hours and then suddenly they're back online later. So this could be another thing like that, but this one is longer than the past as far as I can tell. But in terms of other stuff, making these sorts of possibility of an exit scam going away in the future, there is Open Bazaar, which you mentioned, which just recently integrated Tor. So now I'm sure there are a bunch of people on the Darknet markets that are at least considering moving over there once that's released. And then basically each vendor will basically have their own Alphabay kind of, and then there'll be a central search engine where people can search for whatever illicit goods they're looking for online. So then instead of, it basically gets rid of the exit scam where the market runs away with the money, but then you have, the vendors can still do their own exit scams, which happens a lot, where they build up really good reputation over a long period of time and then just kind of get everyone to finalize their orders early and then take all the money and run. So they exit their reputation, as a lot of people like to say. And then there's a lot of stuff overall that'll make the Darknet markets more user-friendly in general coming out, like Tumblebit and Lightning Network, where like with Tumblebit, you can basically have instant transactions that are much more private than on-chain transactions. It's kind of more like the original vision of digital cash from the 90s, where it's completely anonymous, basically, and it all happens off-chain. And then another thing that could eventually be interesting is hedging to US dollars with Bitcoin, because I think Silk Road even offered this option. It might have been part of Ross Ulbricht's downfall, because apparently he was offering the option for the vendors to hedge their Bitcoin to US dollars. And what he was doing in the background was basically selling Bitcoin for USD on Mt. Gox back in like the Wild West days of Mt. Gox. So that would be another very good feature for these Darknet markets, which is still a very important part of the Bitcoin ecosystem, whether you like it or not.
That's always what they used to say about Sheep Marketplace, that the service was fantastic, right until that last weekend when they exit scanned. Tone Vase, your thoughts?
Well, so they did come back, right?
They are back online right now.
And no one lost any Bitcoin?
Not yet.
Not that we know of. So, look, this would have been their best chance to exit scam, right? The fact that they came back and everyone still had their Bitcoin. I mean, it makes it less likely that they're going to exit scam voluntarily. Right now, the risks have always been there, right? So every day, whether it's a gambling website, whether it's a darknet market website, any website, whether it's Poloniex, right? Any website that is a custodian of other people's Bitcoins, every day the C-level management of that company wakes up and makes a decision whether it's worth it for them to keep the business running or whether it's worth it for them to take all of the crypto in their possession and run away with it. And this is also true of traditional gambling websites before Bitcoin even existed, right? This is kind of how it is. A little harder at a bank, but in these kinds of markets, I mean, that's the decision they have to make. Now, once you're down for 9 hours unexpectedly, you're expected to lose a bunch of business. So if Alphabay was seriously planning to exit scam, they would not have gone down for 9 hours and then come back with everyone's coins. They would have exit scammed yesterday if they were planning on doing that in the future. Now, that's a voluntary exit scam. There are also involuntary exit scams in that if the authorities are closing in, they might just shut it down and keep the Bitcoin. If they get hacked for, let's say, 20% of people's Bitcoin holdings, they may be more interested in taking the 80% remaining and disappearing than dealing with the consequences of informing people that 20% are gone, right? If you're going to get like 80% of the blame for losing 20% of the coins, you might as well lose 100% of the coins and take 100% of the blame, right? I mean, it's like that 80-20 rule. And yeah, this is the business that we're in. Will decentralized versions of these markets eventually come online? Probably. They probably come online, but they don't even need to be decentralized. Remember, the money needs to be decentralized. Bitcoin, in a way, created decentralized money, but now you just need a decentralized holding of that money, right? So perhaps someone will step up and be a third-party middleman where every Bitcoin is, in a way, a multi-sig. So even though, let's say, a darknet market website is centralized with their servers, they can provide the option to decentralize all of the individual's storage with a third-party multi-sig that could be another darknet site, right? So for example, two competing darknet market sites can actually go into a partnership to, in a way, I mean, I'm just speculating here, right? So two darknet market sites that are competing with each other, they could actually serve as a check on each other by being that third-party signer. So let's say Alphabay and their biggest competitor and the user of that site, all three of them have a key. So if one of those two competitors screws up, it's very easy for you to take your money and go to the competitor because the competitor has a multi-sig key holding on because you're thinking of going over to them in case your current, I guess, dealer screws up. There are lots of creative ways to go about protecting users' funds that do not require complete decentralization of the market itself, like Open Bazaar is doing. But Open
how do you know the two markets? How do you know the two markets aren't the same person?
Or that they wouldn't just collaborate to steal your money. You trust no one.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, but I agree. But it helps. It helps, right? So like I said, you're right. These are additional risks, and you can choose your own competitor, and you're right. It could be one and the same. It's possible. You can also rotate competitors. And yes, they could also be one and the same, right? I'm just saying that there could be safeguards without decentralizing the market itself, right? Because decentralizing the market, what Open Bazaar is doing, may or may not be too inefficient for what needs to be done, because look, the money, the medium of exchange, Bitcoin, is decentralized, and it's very difficult and it's very expensive. A cheaper way to do it is to perhaps have another middleman, and it doesn't have to be another dark market site. It could be, a bit of a trusted middleman to act as a third party that is also anonymous, right? But I'm just saying, like, you don't have to go to the ultimate option of decentralizing the store, because that may not be inefficient and a bit of an overkill to get the job done.
Well, I think what people are looking for here, or what the main service that Alphabay and those kind of darknet markets are providing, is escrow, basically.
Right.
And then on Open Bazaar, you have a market of escrow agents, basically, that all compete against each other. Like, anyone can sign up and be an escrow agent without having to, like, develop their own website.
Right, but you're literally running the store on your own server, right? So everyone's running the store on their own server, on their own computer. And that store can only be functioning as long as your computer is functioning. So it's like a Bitcoin node.
Yeah, but I imagine it would be similar to, Ross Ulbricht ran Silk Road in a VPS. So I imagine there'll be some kind of service to be able to do that. There used to be this Onion website called Freedom Hosting, where anyone could launch their website whenever they wanted.
But I know.
They launched hosted stores in the 2.0 version of Open Bazaar. You can have a hosted store that wouldn't have to run on your computer all the time.
There's another issue with the multi-sig in that. Just 1 second. There's another issue with the multi-sig in that a lot of these marketplaces have already integrated that, and nobody uses it. So.
Well, maybe they'll start. Maybe a few more exit scams and they'll start, because you also have to realize that you also have to realize your clientele, right? I mean, I've literally some of these people have called me up for consulting services in order to educate them how to use a Bitcoin ATM machine over the phone, right, as they're walking up to one. So a lot of these people they're sophisticated enough to use an eBay, but they may not be sophisticated enough to run their own servers. So you have to also keep in mind of your clientele.
It's also worth noting that Tone believed because they were down for 9 hours and they came back, that proves they're not going to exit scam. They could still exit scam. They could have just had a maintenance problem that was unavoidable. Kyle, do you have more on that topic?
No, I was just going to agree with Tone in that whatever Open Bazaar does, whether they're building it for the darknet market or not, for the darknet markets to use it, it's going to be it has to be very user friendly. I agree, but it's already very not user friendly to have to use Tails or some operating system like that and go through Tor, and it's really slow and all that kind of stuff. But from what I've seen, Alphabay's website is very slick. It's probably one of the better hidden services out there in terms of user experience.
All right, let's move on to the exit question. Exit question. Keeping Ross Ulbricht in prison for the rest of his life is having a real and direct effect on the spread of darknet markets, limiting their use and providing a prohibitive example that is making others change their minds and turn their backs on millions of dollars. Yes or no, Blake Anderson?
Well, Ross was really special in that he had morals and he had principles. So that was special about him. What he did and the technology understanding required to do it is not special. Like, there's a lot of people that are all coming up to the same path at the same rate of speed, and wasting taxpayer money to keep him in a cage for the rest of his life isn't going to do a goddamn thing. And I'm still so angry about it that I lose sleep over it, honestly.
Kyle Torpy.
Yeah, I think there's still a bunch of markets out there that you can use. To make a point about, someone was asking in the chat about the hedging mechanism for price volatility for the darknet markets. I wasn't talking about something like Circle or Uphold or a traditional exchange where you sell your Bitcoin for dollars. I was more talking like a smart contract, basically, where two parties put their money into it, and then one party goes long US dollar, one goes short, and then you can basically hedge against Bitcoin's price volatility in a decentralized manner, where your money is still, the value you're holding is still yours, and no one can really take it from you.
Tone Vase.
I'm just gonna second what Blake said. I mean, he kind of said it perfectly.
I would also like to unfortunately note that Ross has been moved to a maximum security prison. We're not sure why he's been moved. He doesn't seem like a threat. He seems more like a Boy Scout.
Well, that's where he's always been, MCC in Manhattan.
No, they said that they moved him to another system or another prison. I'm not sure the details.
Oh, really?
It's on his Twitter feed. At first, they didn't know where he'd gone at all. So you know how that's great. Moving on to issue 4, $50 million Bitcoin fund. A former manager from Bain Capital has created a $50 million Bitcoin fund made up of rich families from Latin America who, according to one advisor, cannot store their savings in the local currency because it is not smart. The fund will be mostly locked in until 180 days after the next Bitcoin halving in 2020. Is this a smart investment? Will we see more Bitcoin-based funds like this in the future? Let's go to Tone Vase.
I mean, is it a smart investment? I'm going to say no, because, you know, they're also buying crazy stuff like Ripple and Zcash and Ethereum. So it's not a smart investment, but 50% of it is in Bitcoin. So if you hold your money long enough in there, your Bitcoin will make up for it. There's a couple of things. I mean, who wrote this article? Oh, Michael De Castillo, actually, one of the few writers of CoinDesk that I actually like. So it was something interesting, like he said in the second paragraph. He might not have a full understanding of how funds work, or it's just a weird quote. It says here that the senior manager from Bain Capital, Roberto Ponzi, and I'm quoting here, is helping to raise $50 million with the purpose of buying cryptocurrencies for family offices. That wording seems a little strange to me. So family offices are basically hedge funds that do not take outside money. So they're called family offices, right? So it's either, you know, some rich guy managing his family's money. Like, you're not, basically, as long as you're not managing strangers' money, you are considered a family office. It can be your family's money, it can be your own money. Like, I'm a family office, like I'm a trader. If you're an independent trader, you are a family office. Now, if you're managing enough money, you can then, you know, allow. I mean, you're not really you could allow others to also manage that money on your behalf, and then you become your family office acts as a high net worth individual. So if he is focused on family offices, they could be an individual or literally like a pool together of family money. He's looking to get some of that money into his fund and hold the tokens there. Now, there is a minimum hold on some of the tokens. Like, if you invest over $2.5 million, you can have you are allowed to sell. You're only locked in for half a year. It sounds like if you are investing less than $2.5 million, you're locked in till the year 2020 after the halving, which is in a way kind of ridiculous. You're basically handing your money to some guy to decide which cryptos to buy on your behalf, which I guess is similar to handing your money to some guy who's going to buy stocks on your behalf. So what you're basically doing is you're betting on this guy's ability to pick winners and losers in the crypto space, and considering he is buying out, like literally outright bullshit like Ripple, which is probably the worst on that list, right? If I had to rank his list of the coins that he's going to buy, I would say Ripple is the worst. Ethereum is probably second. The Zcash is probably third. And Litecoin is not even mentioned. Oh, no, sorry, Litecoin is mentioned, right? Oh, and Dash is mentioned. Oh, God. Okay, so here's the ranking of how stupid this fund is. Ripple is the worst of them all. Shoot, Dash or Ethereum, man, that's a hard choice. That's a really hard choice. I would say Dash is the second dumbest. Ethereum's the third. then Zcash, and then the only responsible investments will be Bitcoin and Litecoin, obviously, mostly Bitcoin. So I would not trust this guy with a single Satoshi to invest the money. So that's kind of my opinion on it. It's just someone that has lots of connections and a status in the financial industry who is basically wants to collect fees by investing other people's money in things he probably doesn't understand. This is totally normal in the world of hedge funds. This is totally normal on Wall Street and investment. The reason why I'm okay with this is because he's targeting high net worth individuals who will always hand their money over to some investor who will lose it for them. And this is like standard. This is what it is. This is what VCs do as well, right? So it's every now and then the blind squirrel, aka the manager, manages to get lucky, and these investors make money. But in reality, they're no different than a guy trading from his home, and he'll lose 90% of the time.
All right, Tone doesn't like it, so we know it's going to make a fortune. Let's go to Blake Anderson.
Well, you know, I think that it probably is a pretty good investment, and it's a good investment in terms of people that don't have the tech savvy ability to go on their computer and just buy Bitcoins. Because obviously, yeah, I mean, do that. The less middlemen between you and what you're doing, as a general rule, the exponentially better things get. Like if you're buying drugs from somebody and you can find out who his dealer is, it's good for you to go do that. Not that I want everybody to go out and like get better drugs for a better price, but it's a good example in terms of cutting out a middleman. Huge advantage right there. So when they are going to take a basket of people's money and buy different things, am I a huge supporter of all things they're buying? No, but at least 50% Bitcoin. They're locked in at a long horizon, which is what I talk about all the time. Don't buy on a short ephemeral horizon and lose your hat. And I think the people that invest will do well, and I think that their options in terms of storing value outside of this are suboptimal. So I think this is fantastic overall. Is it perfect? No, absolutely not. And it could be done poorly and things could go wrong. But I think that if done right, it's a very big value proposition to the people of that locality.
Hey, Blake, let me ask you a question. This could be like a second exit question, so maybe Kyle will answer it as well. Do you think that this fund will outperform just Bitcoin by the halving of 2020?
Oh, no, I don't think it will. And that's why I said it's a good investment for people that don't know how to buy raw Bitcoin, just Bitcoin.
Right, but wouldn't it make more sense for you to simply find another manager that will only buy Bitcoin?
If that's available, it may be a better opportunity. Yeah, for sure. I mean, the closer you can get to eliminating any type of middleman that needs to, be fed lunch in terms of the proceedings. I mean, yeah, you do better.
You also want to trust someone that has funds already. Presumably, this guy with his track record at Bain isn't going to run out on you. Maybe the Bitcoin only fund is more shady. Maybe you're better in the safe investment.
Oh, right. No, of course. No, but those are different risks, right? I'm just talking about only investment risk. The value proposition here, I mean, the risk of the Alphabay risk is the same here as with Alphabay, right? I mean, he can just take all of those cryptos and run away, right? The crypto risk.
But he is putting his name on the line. He has a history. The Alphabay guy, hacker A, hacker B, but we just don't know them.
No, that's true. But Big Vern was a name also, right? But the risk of a hack like Bitfinex is always there. The risk of a guy with a name, like guys with names never, scammed people before, right? Bernie Madoff, right? So the guy with a name, I mean, those risks are the same across the board, right? We're that risk isn't going anywhere. The investment is like the question that look, he's going to high net worth individuals who should be a little smarter than your average guy. And the question is, will this guy from Bain Capital outperform Bitcoin on long term by trading Bitcoin and more?
I want to just jump in for one quick second. One of the mistakes that people make is trying to always push the absolute optimal trade instead of trying to make trades which are risk managed and you can make a good investment on. So be careful of criticizing something because it's not the maximally optimal investment that you can make. I think that that's a hole that some people fall into. I just wanted to throw that in really quick.
All right, let's go to Kyle Torpy. What do you think about this issue?
I definitely agree with Tone when he talks about it makes a lot more sense just to hold Bitcoin than invest in this fund. I mean, as he said, like, what does this Bain guy even know about cryptocurrencies at all? How long has he been following the space? If he's investing in Dash, I have a feeling it hasn't been that long. Like, and all of these, like, so I've been reading more about drive chains lately, and Paul and the guys that are working on that are pretty much done with it, and it's going through the mailing list now. Like, the blind merge mining stuff was the last thing they wanted to fix for, like, the main skeptics like Peter Todd, who kept saying it's not secure. So now if that's pretty much done, we can have a big block drive chain, which gets rid of the need for Litecoin, Dash, and all the microtransaction coins. We can have Mimblewimble eventually, which will be much more private and scalable. And even though it doesn't seem that Ethereum is useful at all, RSK is going to launch their hybrid drive chain, federated chain later this year. So it's like, once you have those three chains, like the microtransactions, the privacy, and the smart contracts as side chains, if they're even needed, I just don't see what role any of these altcoins are going to play. So, like, even if you want to say that drive chains aren't as secure as the Bitcoin main chain, which they're probably not, but Paul has some pretty convincing arguments as to why they're pretty much, or they're at least nearly as secure as the main chain. I lost my train of thought, but
all the altcoins will serve their purpose of dumping their money back into Bitcoin.
I like the there will be blood. You know, like Bitcoin is like the big like sycamore tree, and then all the root systems for all the altcoins and stuff. And then people are like, "Yay! Look, the altcoins are going up a little bit." Then you can see when they all pump back into the main chain, and they all go down uniformly. And it's like, I drink your milkshake. I love those charts when people point them out.
I drink it up. Let's move on to the exit question. Is it better to hodl or to trust a fund? What should you do with your Bitcoin when they become more valuable? Blake Anderson.
Oh, you should definitely hodl, squat, get reeled down in like a ball, and just, hodl. Any type of middleman is not the best, like I was saying before. And middlemen, in terms of this new decentralized digital storage of value, they're almost exponentially worse than they were previously in history. So really, 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 really tamper your expectations in terms of what is safe and what you're going to get back whenever there's anybody standing between you. So I guess that's kind of my, hodl yourself. But if you can't do that, don't do it wrong. Try to get somebody that's an expert, or educate yourself, and hold the right way. Don't get your stuff stolen.
Kyle Torpy.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with people investing in funds where the Bitcoins are held by a third party necessarily. Like, that's still a way to use Bitcoin where you don't have to do anything on chain and you can just speculate on the price. Obviously, the best case scenario is that you're holding your own Bitcoin in like a Trezor somewhere, but some people simply aren't technically competent enough to do that. So these third-party custodians still have some sort of role to play.
Tone Vase.
Well, since my answer is never simple, I'm just going to break it up into tranches. So the best way is to hodl yourself. Your second best option is to let somebody hodl for you, just like what GBTC is doing. Like, they're just holding your Bitcoin for you. The third best option is to find that middleman that's holding it for you that is also actively trading, but only Bitcoin. Your fourth best option is, or like now you're getting into bad options, is a middleman that is holding not just Bitcoin, but other cryptocurrencies of your choice. And your absolute worst option at number 5 is a fund manager that is actively trading Bitcoin and alts. So I kind of break it down that way.
My message to you is to not put all your eggs in one basket. Maybe you're really rich and you're in Latin America and you're going to invest in this fund. Instead of putting 30 million into this fund, put 10 million in this fund, 10 million in another fund, 10 million in another fund. That way, if somebody runs off with your funds, at least you still have some of them. For people that have a large amount of Bitcoin, maybe you have Bitcoin on a paper wallet and now it's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Guess what? You can afford a Trezor or a Ledger or a safe deposit box. It's okay to take your investment that was once small and maybe it was safe under your bed and to move it into a nice safe deposit box. That's a good use of your money. It's a smart idea. You can also have multiple copies of the key. You don't have to rely on one place. But yes, you need to break it up. You need to move it around, spread it out, maybe break open those paper wallets, make smaller paper wallets, hide them in more places.
Think of the compartments of the Titanic. Like the compartments of the Titanic, they were foolproof for the Titanic, and they can be foolproof for you.
Right, but those are different risks, right? Like I'm just talking about specifically economic risk, not not loss.
Even so, I don't think it's that bad an idea for a very rich person to trust Coinbase or Zappo or this fund.
Right.
If you're not technically strong and you don't necessarily want to be technically strong, you don't want to take these risks, even if you did take some consulting services or you read some manuals. I mean, there are things you can do, but trusting into one of these things, trusting into a technical guy, but don't just trust one technical guy. Trust a couple. Don't,
I also wanted to jump in really quick on what Tone said. He was talking about financial risk versus other types of risk. And really all risks are intermarried in terms of when you take a full stack approach to looking into if something's going to work or not. So I think that it's valuable what Tone is saying. You can break down risk into different categories, but also there's a version of risk which you can take, the risk management policies that you could use to mitigate various forms of risk and then tie them all together. And Bitcoin has done that, which is why so many people are like, the fundamental principles of this network, being able to verify the chain and having it decentralized are important, versus people that are like, risk management can be better, just pigeonholed over here. We talk about financial risk management, and then the other risk management will just go away, which isn't really true. It really is all married together, and you can consider various information in terms of risk management and mitigation, but it does all link together. And so having that big wide roadmap is extremely important. And I know Tone knows that, but just based on what he had said, I wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, but I just want to let the people know that there's completely different risk. Like when I talk about investing, like picking your investment manager and having them be active or not active, I mean, that's completely outside of the risk involved as a coin custodian. They're completely, they're together, but they're sometimes one of them is always assumed. And but you still have to, even if you assume that risk of theft of your coins, you still have to pick your investment wisely based on what they're going to do with that coin, or based on what they say they're going to do with that coin. And
maybe I could bring this into the real world a little bit. This risk thing that I was talking about, where would this manifest itself? Well, for example, somebody was like, I can make giant crushing arbitrage gains off of these two exchanges by trading back and forth because the price differences are different, and it's a no risk situation. I'm going to strike a series of matching deals, and I'm just going to continually push my holdings up. But they didn't take into consideration the risk of exit scams on either one or both of those exchanges, which is a huge risk. It's not a risk of some of your money being compromised. It's a risk of all of your money becoming unavailable. So in terms of taking the real world risk in terms of situations, both financially, in terms of individual access, because actual physical access to any given system is the biggest security concern ever, always will be, and then you can take other risks down from there. So it's very, very, very easy to get into risk management at a shallow level and to think that you really have everything mastered, and then to finally open up this door into the more wide category of risk management and be like, oh no, I made really bad investments and hurt myself. So just be careful in that regard.
Don't be like the guy that has 1,000 Bitcoins on his phone, or had 1,000 Bitcoins on his phone. Spoiler alert, that's from the future. It hasn't happened yet. Go ahead, Kyle, but we got to move to the next issue soon.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Tone and Blake what they think in terms of all this risk that exists on all these exchanges. What does that mean for the real Bitcoin price? Because does the risk associated with these exchanges factor into the price on all the different exchanges? Do we know the real Bitcoin price?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very, very, very good question. There's a whole bunch of risk. There's the risk that Bitcoin is going to not be tradable as easily in the United States because a Coinbase is going to shit the bed and close down if it starts to go up or down really fast. Yeah, these are huge, huge, huge limiting factors to the price and adoption of Bitcoin. And this is also why Bitcoin has a huge advantage over other coins that people don't seem to know, don't have a Coinbase or don't have a direct on-ramp. So these things can be seen as negative or positive. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the risk represented by not being able to trade on one day, or doing certain things that you can't count on, like, okay, I can't trade on Coinbase, now I have to go onto localbitcoins.com, sign up for an account, make one, try to find a buyer, try to go find him. Like, that's a lot of stuff to try to do in a short period of time because your preferred method is not operational. Those types of things are really, really, really slowing Bitcoin down, and the more that we can make it so that the exchanges are secure and you don't have to worry about them as much, which I don't know how we're going to do that, but it may be feasible somehow. And then if Coinbase stops shitting the bed in terms of going down when there's lots of trades, those things would allow the community to grow a lot faster in all directions, in pretty much my objective opinion.
Yeah, but as far as the price is concerned, it's really hard to say. Look, Coinbase is like the cheapest coins you'll ever buy is on Coinbase, right? So if Coinbase is out of the equation, the price of Bitcoin will most likely go up, right? Because they're providing you the cheapest Bitcoin. Like local Bitcoin's price is way higher, and it's harder for those people to source those Bitcoins. So the liquidity will get smaller, but as the liquidity gets smaller, the price may actually increase because of it. It's just like, for example, let's say a major exchange gets hacked and another 100,000 or 200,000 Bitcoin gets stolen. It's not easy moving those Bitcoins. When you steal 300,000 Bitcoin, it's not exactly easy to move. That Bitcoin kind of falls out of circulation. And the people that have just had their Bitcoin hacked, a lot of these people are now going to scramble, and they're going to try to buy as much Bitcoin as they can because they know that they may miss out, and then Bitcoin goes up, and then they won't have any Bitcoin left, right? So a lot of these hacks and a lot of these exchanges going down is actually a positive for the price of Bitcoin going up.
We've got 583 viewers. If everyone could give us a thumbs up and a share. I'm not sure we're going to break the record today, though.
Can I jump back in one more time? I like Coinbase a lot. I've used Coinbase a ton. I think that Coinbase has a big value proposition. I think that when there's a lot of activity, they could do better at scaling. But I don't mean to slap Coinbase when they've done so much for the community and for me personally. Like, use Coinbase. They're great. Just have a backup if there's going to be a huge volume spike, because they don't seem to really, 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 really prioritize scaling the way that some people feel they should.
They're likely also the source of the local Bitcoin's Bitcoin. Moving on to issue 5, Bitcoin, $55,000. A major Wall Street strategist has weighed in on Bitcoin, and he thinks it could rise to $20,000 to $50,000 in the next 5 years, saying so in his report entitled, "A Framework for Valuing Bitcoin as a Substitute for Gold." Gold, he says, is on its way out. Bitcoin is on his way in. Kyle Torpy, do you agree with his analysis? Are you incredibly bullish for Bitcoin in the long term?
His price point is, it could happen. If you look at all the reasons to hold Bitcoin, like he pointed out, the digital gold use case, and then you have the potential for people to use it for basically a replacement for offshore bank accounts where you're just hiding your wealth from taxation, especially when better privacy features are added to Bitcoin. I mean, those two use cases alone are worthy of trillions of dollars in terms of a market cap for Bitcoin. So it's definitely possible. I don't know what the percentage likelihood of that would be. Maybe you could estimate that based on the current Bitcoin price compared to the eventual market cap that would happen. But yeah, it's possible.
Let's go to Tone Vase.
So look, I've been saying this for years, especially the gold versus Bitcoin part. And so there's nothing new here. Like, none of the details of his analysis were given as to what exactly Bitcoin does that gold doesn't. And I talk about this in my presentations now for years. And it's basically the ability to transfer Bitcoin. I mean, gold was used as a transfer of value cross-border, and gold is no longer useful for that because of metal detectors. And but Bitcoin is. Yeah.
Not only that, but the amounts of paper gold that are circulating also make it so that the network, even when it does work for trading gold, is operational, that it's not correct. Anyway.
I don't mind. I don't mind paper trading. I had this debate with Andy Hoffman. If you remove paper trading of gold, it's going to be diamonds.
Well, I didn't say remove paper trading. I just said that it has an impact.
Sure. But no, I mean, I agree with the analysis that Bitcoin does have better properties than gold. And but throwing a value like 55,000 by 2022, like I don't know if he's just guessing that number. I'm sure he has some kind of a model, and he put in a bunch of parameters, and that's the number that it spat out. But to me, it's just a guess. I mean, he's just guessing on the, it actually says 20,000 to 55,000, but of course the headlines have to pick the higher range and not the lower range, right? Look, I don't know what price Bitcoin's going to be in 2022. I try not to guess that far ahead. If I am going to guess further up, I'm going to have some kind of a technical chart, and I'm going to say based on probabilities of technical analysis, this is the price I think has the most likely probability. Now, a lot of these analysts are also doing this stuff on like stocks, and they say, well, based on projections of sales and revenues, we think the value of the stock should be so-and-so by so-and-so day. That is outside of technical analysis, but that kind of analysis is very, very difficult to do with Bitcoin because Bitcoin is so speculative that it's hard to factor in the speculation aspect of Bitcoin with any kind of fundamentals. So I agree with him on the fact that it's taken over the properties of gold, but I mean, he could have said any number there. He could have said 50,000. He could have said 60,000. He could have said 100,000. He could have said 25,000. I mean, that's just an arbitrary guess. But I'm sure the report reads very well as long as you, don't take the actual number too seriously.
Oh, but I like the sound of 55,000. It's a nice round number, has lots of fives. And plus, it would ruin the headline if it said Bitcoin analyst predicts chart. Let's go to Blake Anderson.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what Tone said. Some people think that Bitcoin will really, really, really take off when the rubber hits the road in terms of the old system falling apart. The old system starts falling apart at a very, very rapid speed if there's something like a COMEX default. If there's a COMEX default and people start pausing trading because the prices are going up and down so much, and then that systemic pausing of stepping back and waiting for it to unfold causes huge splits in the value of currency and materials, that's not good. That would be a huge disaster that would cause massive amounts of flight into Bitcoin. That could cause $55,000 Bitcoin if it spurred a continual deflationary spiral in which it kept pulling more factors into people holding, buying, waiting, holding, and buying. But short of that, it'll be a while before that happens. Comparing it to gold, I think that a good comparison for gold and Bitcoin is mail to email. It's a pretty simple comparison that a lot of people understand. Obviously, the value proposition of email is pretty easy to understand versus the value proposition of physical, tangible manipulation across who knows where. Just the other day, somebody that I know was like, I got a birthday card from my grandma and it never came. Like, that's unfortunate. Like, of course, there's cash inside of it because it's from an old person, and just like the odds of somebody finding out what happened to that card are not good. So think about the value proposition in terms of how much more popular email is going to be in the future than mail. And then, Bitcoin and markets and utilities should match those macro factors and continue to push Bitcoin up as it replaces categorically inferior methods of transacting value. Bitcoin is a very, 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 very smart invention that's very, very, very good for one thing. People keep trying to apply it to other things, but it works really well for what it's doing. So keep that in mind.
The mail is an incredible invention, though I don't imagine how they could do it without horses. Kyle Torpy.
I already went. I don't really have anything to add.
It's not true you didn't already go. We started with Tone. Let's go back to Tone. The price of Bitcoin this time next week, higher or lower?
Oh man, this is a little bit of a tough spot. I'm gonna say at this time next week is gonna be about the same. I've been bullish on Bitcoin forever.
A push, the worst of all.
I know it's bad. I think it will be about the same. For the first time ever, I'm actually gonna push on this one. I think we need another week to kind of get our bearings over what's gonna happen August 1st. One quick comment on what Blake said. I think that a complete, economic implosion around the world, I don't think that would be good for Bitcoin. I don't. I think
I
that
meant specifically a COMEX default.
Well, yeah, specifically a COMEX default, sure, but you'd be surprised how few gold bugs there really are, and I don't think that would drive the Bitcoin price to $55,000. But a 2008 and worse style economic collapse, I don't think it would be good for Bitcoin because back then it crashed the price of gold as well. When the economy crashes and the stock market crashes and all of these things crashes, people lose their jobs. And when enough people start to lose their jobs, they don't exactly have the money to go out and buy Bitcoin, right? Food becomes more important, necessities become more important, not speculative, cryptocurrencies.
I think you're thinking about this from too much of an individualized basis. Think about nation states. If you're talking about more than a COMEX default and things are starting to really, really, really go rough, you don't have the option of taking your scooter anymore. You have to take your car, or you have to do what's absolute best in terms of what you can do. So what nation states are going to do to try to pay bills is they're going to liquidate storage of value that's really, really dense, platinum, palladium, gold, silver, and they're going to want to acquire things that are easy to store, that aren't expensive to move, things like Bitcoin. So I think that
I don't know. I mean, if there is a huge collapse, then the nation states have no money, right? They have no money
true.
either.
The USSR kept the power on when it collapsed, so that's just unfounded completely.
Well, they kept the power on, obviously, because they can create power internally. There's a lot of coal being mined out there.
You can't create power internally. I mean, unless you have lots and lots and lots of natural energy solutions. I mean, power is where the rubber hits the road. If you don't have power,
all right, and the question was higher or lower? Blake Anderson, higher or lower?
God, I think that what Tone said is very, very, very spot on. I agree with Tone. I think it's going to be a push for now. But you know what? Let's just say higher. It's going to go higher because this episode's going to do really well, and people are going to go out there and they're going to know that I'm right and that everybody else is wrong.
You're saying higher now. We know you're a push. Kyle, give us more than a push. Come on.
I think we're going to see a lot of uncertainty for the next few months as we wait for SegWit 2x and the user-activated soft fork. I think we'll get SegWit by August 1st, but then I think the problem will be whether or not these Bitcoin companies are going to try to hard fork and create Bitcoin Enterprise altcoin, and that could cause a lot of problems. I think Bitcoin, like I said before, is resistant to contentious hard forks, so maybe it won't happen, but I mean, we've seen threats to hard fork. This is like the 4th or 5th after XT, Classic, and Unlimited. So, but this one has, I mean, all these companies signed a pledge, and they're some of the biggest companies in the space. But I think some of the exchanges are not signed on, like Bitfinex and Kraken, I think, and even, I don't remember if Coinbase signed on, but those are really some of the most important entities because they will, if there is a hard fork attempt, they will likely list both coins, and then we'll see what the market would pick out.
To be clear on what a push is, it's between 2,500 and 2,600 on Bitstamp.
I like what Kyle's giving me. The more uncertainty. Now we're going down. I'm going to go with higher still, although there is the fork fear is starting to get very real as we hit the July 21st. That's when SegWit 2x is supposed to be online. And then, of course, the August 1st UASF. So we peaked around 614 viewers. Thanks to everyone for giving us a thumbs up and a share. We're going to move on to predictions or a story of the week. Tone Vase, are you ready with a prediction or a story of the week?
All right. I guess I'll just talk about price real quick, and I'll make it short. I'm only going to use the daily chart. I'm still working on my resolutions. I finally got a laptop, by the way. I hope I have much better quality all around. Nothing is freezing. So we pulled back today and we bounced right off the 50-day moving average. Ideally, you want to stay above the 50-day moving average, but it will be perfectly fine if we fall a little bit lower to around 2,400 on Bitfinex. So if we fall to 2,400 on Bitfinex, it's a reasonable place for a rebound. So this yellow one right here has thrown me from bullish back into cash and neutral as far as a trading position goes. So my current view on the environment right here on today's big down day is time to go neutral, time to go to cash, and then you wait. Will the next few days show us signs of a bear, or will the next few days start showing us signs of a bull market again? And we'll see.
All right, let's go to Kyle Torpy for a prediction or a story of the week.
So I'll have some op-eds coming out soon about SegWit 2x and drive chains and other topics I've been thinking about. So look out for those next week, starting next week, probably on Bitcoin Magazine. I'll also take this time to plug my newsletter that I've been putting out the past few weeks. I read all the news every day, and it also includes my own stories, anything I publish, and any other story that I think is worth reading. And you can find that on kyletorpy.com.
Good stuff, Kyle. Let's go to Blake Anderson.
Oh, it looks like in chat, the Max Kaiser pseudonym wanted to hear more about me and Tone going into the what if bag about economic collapse. So, I mean, I get fair enough. My story of the week, I'll talk about what I think will happen if there is some type of systemic economic collapse and where I think that would come from if it did happen. What are the risks of it happening right now? I mean, not very high. But the risks of an eventual COMEX default coming from inflationary policy and, possibly more wars or getting involved in more foreign theaters of conflict, eventually there'll be a spot where our economy will be inflating and moving too fast to be able to normally and regularly afford things like energy, food, weapons, and hard goods and things like that. And that's when the physical storage of value markets start to move away from the currency markets, and we start to get like a runaway inflationary spiral, kind of the opposite of the runaway deflationary spirals that we try to see and instantiate into Bitcoin. So people talk kind of all the time about what's going to happen if there's some type of systemic collapse that starts going through the old system. And what I think is going to happen is that, again, I think that large nation states are going to try to sell concentrated storage of value in order to pay the bills or to try to keep the lights on. And for that reason, I think that people that are holding, gold and things like that, for the specific situation that they're thinking about, I think it's going to be just like when traders are taken out by a big Judas candle because they had shorts or stops or longs or whatever they had, and somebody sees how most of the market is going, and then a big, whale will come in and take them out. I think that nation states are going to do a similar thing in terms of hard storage of value if there is systemic economic collapse. Now, what are the odds of systemic economic collapse right now? I mean, it's nothing I'm going to talk about like it's happening right now. But I think that if we were to move more towards that level of instability and continue to push that 150% debt to GDP ratio, that all of that does become a real issue. And I think that people should talk about it more, not in terms of fear porn, it's going to happen now, but what are the factors that would cause it to tip? And what are the initial series of fallout that you could map into different areas? And I just wanted to ask Tone really quick, what do you think about all of that supposition?
I'm not expecting a COMEX collapse. Like it's in no one's interest, right? Like even if there is some hedge fund that's going to profit from a COMEX collapse, a couple of guys in suits are going to show up. And they're going to tell
I'm sorry, the cause would be a tragedy of the commons type cause. It wouldn't be individuals trying to manipulate it for their own good, if that wasn't clear.
Look, I mean, everyone will always take the money, right? There is always one currency that you can move. Like, this is why the moment you think that there's not enough gold, they just offer these people the difference in US dollars, throw them an extra 1 or 2% on top, and you're good to go. No one really cares to hold the damn physical gold, right? Like just a few libertarians. Like none of these people, like all of these big players, like all of these people trading thousands and thousands of contracts on gold and silver, None of them care about physical delivery. They just care about making more US dollars, right? They're no different than
As long as the
these
system is
altcoin
solvent,
traders.
people don't care about delivery. I think that's an important distinction to make, though.
But the system will always be solvent because they can always print more dollars,
Unless
right?
it starts to become insolvent and starts to push a COMEX default.
But that's the thing, right? But you always take the money. You'll always take the money in the least inflationary currency, which is the US dollar. So you can always get them to do it.
By which metric is the US dollar the least inflationary?
By it having the most responsible central bank.
Is that like M3?
And then it doesn't matter because a person with a gun comes along and takes your Bitcoin away and takes your dollars away and takes your gold away.
You get
The only thing that matters in the future is being physically fit, knowing martial arts, having those little whiskey bottles to trade with, as well as rolls of toilet paper. There's your future currency. Little whiskey bottles, toilet paper. You're going to try to trade with a whole bar of gold? Let me give you some slivers. Oh, I'll just take the whole bar. Okay, we've talked enough about the future and world collapse and the toxic Avenger and all the great things that will happen when North Korea turns us into a nuclear smoldering wasteland.
Well, on Thomas's advice, I'm going to make a giant bag of prison wine with some ketchup and.
I still have high hopes for North Korea in 20 years. I really, really do.
What do you think is going to happen there?
Asteroid.
North Korea?
Crater.
What do you think is going to happen with their? What's North Korea doing? They're basically holding the whole world hostage and trying to get as much support as they can.
No,
I think they might be hodling Bitcoin now too.
No, I think their leader is going to get replaced, and they're going to start, removing their communist ways. I have high hopes for North Korea. Like when the pendulum swings that far to the left, it's got to swing the other way.
God, I hope so. I hope that it swings back and they just, enjoy some, I feel so bad for the people of North Korea. I can't even imagine 70 years in a prison camp. Jesus.
Right. My future for North Korea is like the future for East Germany, right? Like sooner or later, the leader will get, removed one way or another. And, some new leader comes in and they'll start making deals with South Korea. And it'll be difficult integrating them back in. But just like East Germany and West Germany, this is going to be 10 times harder, but it's doable. It'll take a generation.
But the problem with the East Germany, West Germany analogy is that China is sitting on the sidelines, intent on not letting them reunify. North Korea is in real trouble of ending up as a crater, a nuclear crater that's too close to Seoul and too close to China. So it's in a bad location, and I'm not sure why we're talking about it. So let's move on. And everyone should subscribe to the Bitcoin group. You can subscribe to the World Crypto Network right below. I've been doing some shows this week on the Mad Bitcoins channel called Today in Bitcoin. Check those out over on the Mad Bitcoins channel. Subscribe, give us a thumbs up and a share. We've been on for over an hour and 45 minutes, and we have 600 viewers. Thanks so much for watching. Tune in next week for another episode of the Bitcoin group. We're out of time. Until next time, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.